new episodes of The View when she tries to pull the race card.
Yes.
And then she's like, America is racist. And then they're like, yeah, they might be racist, but they're not like slave owner racist. Like somebody that we...
That's so true.
Yeah.
One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any, is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what, like, they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
Sunny Hostin, one of the most outspoken and self-assured voices on The View, just experienced a reality check so ironic that it left both her and the internet completely stunned. For years, she has been a relentless advocate for racial justice, reparations, and identity politics. Her fiery debates and unwavering stance have made her a formidable force in daytime television. She speaks with absolute confidence, delivering her opinions with a sense of moral superiority that has earned her both admiration and criticism. If there's a discussion about racial inequality, Sunny is usually leading the charge, unapologetic, fearless, and always ready to challenge those who don't align with her perspective. So when she agreed to participate in PBS's Finding Your Roots, expectations were sky high. The critically acclaimed show, hosted by Henry Louis Gates Jr., takes celebrities on a deep dive into their ancestry, often revealing emotional, shocking, or affirming truths about their heritage. Fans anticipated an emotional journey, one that would validate Sunny's personal narrative and reinforce her activism. But what actually happened? Chaos. Instead of a heartwarming exploration of her roots, the episode took a turn so wild, so unexpected, that it sent shockwaves across social media. The internet couldn't believe it. Comment sections exploded. Twitter threads spread like wildfire. And Sunny, she was completely blindsided. Because here's the thing,
It is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Exactly, because if she is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of...
Someone builds their entire public image around fighting for historical justice, you'd expect them to have a firm grasp of their own history. You'd assume they know exactly where they come from, with no surprises lurking in their family tree. But the revelation Sunny received didn't just catch her off guard. It exposed a level of irony that no one saw coming. The truth about her, ancestry wasn't just surprising, it was downright earth-shattering. The very institutions she has spent her career condemning, her own bloodline had benefited from them. As she sat across from Henry Louis Gates Jr., she was ready for a deep, emotional journey into her past. She likely envisioned uncovering stories of resilience, migration, and struggle, perhaps tales of oppression that mirrored the injustices she so passionately speaks against. Instead, she got something she never expected. Her ancestors weren't struggling immigrants. They weren't the oppressed.
In her defense, everyone has ancestors that did unspeakably horrible things. It's just that not everyone's ancestors have records tied to their DNA about it. Worried for Sunny Hostin's progeny in the future that do a DNA test and find out that they were related to a cast member of The View. And they're like, oh, it all makes so much sense now. Why I'm so stupid and fat.
They weren't even the victims of the system she has dedicated her career to dismantling. They were slave owners. Let that sink in. Sunny Hostin, the same woman who has spent years advocating for reparations, calling out systemic racism, and demanding accountability for historical injustices, just learned that her own ancestors were the ones profiting from slavery. The moment those words left Gates's mouth, her entire demeanor changed. She blinked, stared at the papers in front of her, and sat in stunned silence. Her confidence, usually unwavering, wavered. She struggled to process what she had just heard. Finally, when she spoke, her voice was uncharacteristically unsteady. I didn't think my family was originally from Spain, or slaveholders. The words tumbled out like they didn't belong to her, as if she was still trying to convince herself that this couldn't possibly be true. And then, silence. A long, awkward silence. The kind that makes you wonder if your TV just froze. The air in the room felt heavier. Even Gates, a seasoned expert in delivering shocking genealogy results, seemed to acknowledge the weight of this moment. But being the professional that she is, Sunny tried to recover. She muttered something about how this would be an interesting tidbit for her children to learn. But let's be honest, there was no salvaging this. The internet had already caught fire. Comment sections, Twitter threads, and gossip blogs were lighting up instantly. Critics called it hypocrisy. Fans were left speechless. And Sunny, she had just been served a dose of irony so intense that even she didn't know how to spin it. And this was just the beginning. Now, the world wanted to know.
Guess there's nothing worse than to find out you're a white woman.
She's so disappointed.
It's really disappointing.
Her mother was white.
Oh my God.
shame.
Oh my God.
The horror. History, and finds out that this is fantastic. She is descended from slaveholders. She's descended from slaveholders, and she's been apparently getting a lot of mail about her call for reparations because it turns out she's going to be paying them and not actually receiving.
How was she going to handle this revelation? Would she acknowledge it openly, or would she try to sidestep the discussion? Enter Greg Gutfeld. If irony had a championship trophy, Greg just took home the gold. In classic Gutfeld fashion, he wasted no time diving into the chaos. He kicked off his segment with a punchline that had his audience in stitches. Sunny Hostin's ancestors were slave owners? That's like finding out a vegan secretly owns a barbecue joint. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Greg? He was just getting started. He immediately peeled back the layers of hypocrisy, pointing out that Sunny's entire moral high ground had just taken a massive nosedive.
You hosts, among the dumbest people on television.
Sunny's dumb. Certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked and you went on stage with it and it's nothing
Just
there.
go for it.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
For years, she's been front and center, calling out historical injustices and demanding accountability from others. But now that the spotlight was on her own family's past, the silence was deafening. Greg didn't hold back. He delivered a zinger that landed like a knockout punch. Next time Sunny pulls the race card on The View, someone's going to remind her, at least we're not slave owner racists. The audience lost it. Even Greg had to pause as the laughter took over the room. But this wasn't just about jokes. What many found genuinely troubling was Sunny's complete lack of accountability. Instead of using this shocking revelation as a moment for introspection, maybe even issuing a thoughtful response, she brushed it off as just another historical fact. No deep reflection, no acknowledgement of the irony. Nothing. And the internet? It erupted. Twitter, Instagram.
That has a policy. I mean, I'm not saying that Joe Rogan should be removed from Spotify. He's got 11 million listeners. He's got $100 million, contract as of 2020. But I do think as the podcast platform, you have to have some sort of guidelines. How about a disclaimer on his podcast that says, this is misinformation? How about removing some of the podcasts that disseminate this misinformation?
They have.
And that's
Instagram and TikTok exploded with reactions. One viral tweet summed it up perfectly. Sunny Hostin finding out her family were slave owners is the plot twist of the year. And the memes, they came in waves. One of the most viral, a photoshopped image of Sunny looking stunned with the caption, "Reparations? Let me write that check to myself real quick." Social media had zero mercy. But the bigger question remains, will Sunny finally address the elephant in the room, or is she hoping this controversy just disappears? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the internet never forgets. Some of Sunny's most loyal fans rushed to her defense, arguing that she shouldn't be held responsible for the sins of her ancestors. After all, she wasn't. The one making those decisions centuries ago, but not everyone was willing to let her off the hook so easily. It's not about blaming her for what her ancestors did, one commenter wrote. It's about the hypocrisy of shaming others while ignoring the skeletons in your own closet. And that seemed to be the real issue, not the distant history itself, but the fact that Sunny has spent years condemning others for their pasts, only to turn a blind eye when her own family's history came under scrutiny. Greg Gutfeld wasn't finished either. He used the moment to zoom out from Sunny's personal controversy and address the broader debate around identity politics. He argued that reducing everything to race and historical guilt leaves no room for nuance, personal accountability, or growth. Because at the end of the day, history is important. But how you carry yourself in the present, that matters even more. So, what will Sunny do now? Will she finally reevaluate the way she judges others? Will she acknowledge the irony in her situation? Or will she pretend like none of this ever happened? One thing's for sure, this conversation isn't going away anytime soon.